recording. All right, welcome everybody to this Thrive Together Masterclass. We're going to be talking about how to thrive with a virtual assistant, as a virtual assistant in a real estate business, or as an admin leading a VA or a business owner looking to really grow their business through this form of leverage. So today we have a really great, diverse group in terms of representation of the different sides of the communication equation, right? So Ben Faber is principal of Faber real estate team out in Marin County. And Ben's been working with his virtual assistant for over 2 years. We have Ann Calibuso, who is a marketing coordinator, virtual assistant for Tammy Waugh's team in Tampa, Florida for 18 months. And then we have Carlota you want to pronounce your last name for me, if that's okay?
Sorry, Wenceslao.
Wenceslao, okay. Who's been with Tammy Mallet in New Hampshire for 3 years. And Lena, did you mention you have a virtual assistant also on your team? How long have you guys been working together?
So I'm an independent director of operations, so I work with several teams, but I brought on my first VA. This is I'm 2.5 years into the business now, but I brought her on 6 months ago.
Excellent. 6 months ago, and then we here at Cambium, we hired our Joy Sulunde in 2020. So we're coming up on, actually it'll almost be 5 years. So I'm happy, for us all to share kind of what's been working. And I know that we're all really just like looking forward to connecting as a community and learning from each other. So Ben, I'd love to pick your brain about what prompted you to look for a virtual assistant services when you were trying to figure out, what kind of support you need in your business.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really funny. So, one of my good friends, he, his family runs the most successful property management company in Marin County, California. And we live near each other. And during COVID, he joined the local country club, and he'd always reach out to me on like a Friday and say, "Hey, come out with me, come play golf." And I'm like, "Man, I don't have time to play golf." And he's like, "Yes, you do. You're so successful. You have all the time to do whatever you want." I'm like, "No, it's Friday. I'm going to be working till 10 o'clock." And he's like, "What the heck are you doing?" And I'm like, "Everything." And he's like, "Well, that's why." He's like, "You don't have an assistant?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "I don't know. It takes too much time to hire someone. It takes too much time to train them. I don't want to pay someone, $100,000 because they might not be able to support themselves here locally." And he said, "But what do you need them to do?" And I was like, "Well, as much as possible on the computer." And he's like, "Then why do they need to be local?" And I was like,
Mind
"Because
blown.
I just thought that's what all the top agents
Right? That's
around
like
here
the
do."
traditional model of an assistant is like they're in your office and they, handle your paperwork and that kind of a thing. And so, yeah, where especially where you live and cost of living is so high, you have to have a really high amount of like number of deals and volume for transactions to even start to think about being able to afford that kind of leverage.
Yeah, and the top agents in our area had their assistants also doing everything. And I was like, "Well, how does that work?" They go out, they show the house, they deliver the lockbox, the keys, they're holding the open house, and then you also expect them to come back to the office and like do data entry for
Right.
it's like,
Like
how do they have any
detail
life?
stuff and yeah, behind the scenes, right? So they're always switching gears.
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that's really important in not just our business, but really any business that generates business out in the field is you need to have a team, whether that's one person or multiple people who are at the office quote, whatever the office means, at their desk, at their home base during business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. There's no excuse for them. Oh, I'm out showing a house. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. It's like, you can rely on them, call, text, email, chat, Slack, whatever you want, and they're going to get it done because they're where they need to be successful. So my friend recommended a virtual assistant hiring company. We went through them. Uh, we hired our first virtual assistant, I believe, in 2021. And, within the first week, it was game changing.
Mm.
Um, and, got saved at least an hour of my time. And now we have two virtual assistants. One is, doing data entry, scheduling appointments, helping with marketing, blog, newsletter, website. And then our other virtual assistant is a full-time transaction coordinator. So our team does about 50 transactions a year. And so instead of processing the forms and then once we get a contract, handing it off to a CTC and paying them a fee per transaction, we now have someone we can rely on to do everything with forms. So they can prepare the
In-house.
listing agreement, they
Yeah,
can
you have
prepare
that
the
like
purchase
in-house.
agreement.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not dealing with DocuSign anymore. So long story short, it's been life changing. It's been business changing. Uh, we will, never do it any other way. And we'll just continue to grow that team. And, probably the next hire in a year or so will be a third virtual assistant.
Yeah, I love that. Such a great success story because that's how we want it to go, right? Is that come up with a strategy, a plan for how you're going to grow your team, and very thoughtful, right? About, I'm sure, it's credit to you that you're very thoughtful about what are those specific roles, what are those lanes, because I think that sometimes people get stuck even overwhelmed. It's like, what would I even have them do? And they just sort of throw everything at them, right? And so you're here, you're giving them like a specific track in the business that they can focus on, even dividing it up between the other two virtual assistants. And then, right, the benefit is that you get to have your own process, right? Someone who's always sort of available and on call to respond and execute, and you get to dictate, how you want it done and what kind of service you want to offer to your clients. And I think ultimately they become just like an extension of your brand. What have been the challenges along the way? I mean, what is something that you've faced and kind of overcome using this strategy?
That we only have two and they only work 8 hours, 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There could
I've
be like a
I've
whole
played
fleet of people behind the scenes.
yeah, I've played around like, and I haven't spent too much time on it, but would it make sense to have someone work basically while we're asleep?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, and what is that work that, could be done? And it is quite a lot of work. I think the issue with that just comes when there's, you know, communication,
mm-hmm.
and you need to have really clear expectations and processes. So we might be a ways from that, but challenges, I mean, very little. I think just training any new team member, regardless of where they're from or what language they speak primarily, training is very time, investment intensive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, the faster you can train people, the less back and forth you have. Um, so that's probably what it is, just, the amount of back and forth that can happen. And now we're really spending more time on video calls just like this,
Yeah.
where we go through and we say, hey, here's 5 things on our task list. I want to explain everything to you, and then you go and get it. And we basically eliminated like 30 emails of
Mm-hmm,
back and forth.
mm-hmm.
So we've just implemented that over the last few weeks, and that's been, so far pretty game changing for us.
Nice. Do you have like maybe a standing check-in time where you can kind of address anything that's been coming up and have sort of like a process conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, there's many ways to organize your tasks, but we have basically a task list, and then I can't just put something on there and expect someone else to know what it is. I need to say, hey, Yanni, let's hop on a video call. Here's X number of tasks. This is kind of the explanation for what that means. I'm happy to be on a video call while you're doing it to start. Does that make sense? And then giving Yanni an opportunity to say, well, I have a question about this or a question about that. And then she can go through and get things done. And right now we're just doing a check-in on Monday mornings for 30 minutes and a check-in on Friday mornings for 30 minutes. But throughout the week, just kind of, when it works for my schedule, quite frankly, I'll reach out to our two virtual assistants and schedule video calls because I just think it's so important to spend as much time as I can with them.
Yeah, because that's something that, that is a challenge, right? Having remote team members. I work entirely remote, so I get it, right? Like you're trying to build rapport with your team and also build trust when you're not physically in the same space. It's a different experience that requires being really, really intentional. I think more than potentially in person, we can give a lot of grace to showing up late or taking, maybe not responding right away. But when that's all we have in terms of communication with people, it becomes really, really essential that people always kind of show up. And even when life happens, there was someone, new on your team and they just sort of ghosted a little bit, because of an emergency or whatever. And we absolutely accommodate emergencies. So it's like when we don't have any news and information, then the questions start to come up and then we start to hesitate and it's just so hard to work together and move forward like that. So that ties into Lena's question. What does the expectation conversation look like for you? How do you set expectations with your VAs?
I mean, they're rock stars. I don't know if we're lucky or what, but I mean, the expectation is, they work from 9 to 5:30. They take 2 10-minute breaks. We used to have Yanni track everything she was doing. And then at the end of the day, she'd send me this list, and I'd be like, did she just waste an hour of productivity making this list? Like, she's proven herself to be so productive for such a long time, and we see throughout the day what she's doing. Do we really need to see that? Um, I don't think so. Um, so expectation is they get done what they need to do. If they have questions, they know they can reach out. There's no such thing as a bad question. Um, but yeah, and then certain things are time sensitive and plenty of things are not time sensitive. And if, something maybe a task hasn't happened for a couple days and we thought it would be started by now, it might make sense to do a check-in video call, see where they're at with their other responsibilities, and see if it's reasonable for them to get started on that, or, do they have more important priorities that maybe they haven't shared with me, but they're communicating with, another team member on other responsibilities. So I think just the expectation is clear communication, and making sure that, you know, they have everything they need to be successful, that you're not asking them to do something without, kind of walking them through how to do it.
Yeah, I love that because a lot of times we're finding, different virtual assistants on different teams, they'll get stuck. And I don't know if some of it might be cultural, you ladies can weigh in on this, but sometimes, rather than bothering anyone or, having to ask for anything, they'll just sort of stall in place and wait, and so I think really getting the habit of being like, hey, what do you need in order to be able to execute this and just have that as part of the ongoing conversation, it opens a door to them saying, actually, I really, this piece of information or this contact, or I had this question. And and that's not so hard to do. That's actually like a best leadership practice, right? Is to say, what do you need in order to be able to execute your responsibilities? So I think that can be really helpful. I thought of when you were talking about the value of the hopping on the Zoom call. Something that we've discovered with Joyce on our team is how well it works to use Loom. So even, because she and I actually, I'm in Europe, and so we overlap more of the day than, potentially someone in California, but there's still all kinds of things that pop up that, in order to not interrupt my flow, I'll just start recording a Loom and just show my screen and explain what I need. And that works so well. Like, because the visual component and explanation, rather than writing out an email, I'll just sort of explain it. And, sometimes she'll come back with a question or a video, but more often than not, that's sufficient to really get it done. So there's all kinds of tools like that that are really helpful and make it easier for asynchronous communication that's actually productive and fun. And throw in some jokes or still build rapport, but everybody has their own schedule and can kind of work independently. So that's been a great tool. Thank you, Ben. I'd love to hear also from Anne and Carlota about kind of your journeys. What drew you to becoming a virtual assistant in the real estate industry and in marketing in particular?
So I began my journey as a VA in 2021 when that's the time when the world was rapidly like shifting into a remote work. So initially I work with um a company here, a VA company here in the Philippines, and I was able to get a client from them, which is a realtor in Houston. So the first ever client of mine was a realtor. Tammy was my third client. The second one is a real estate team. So I don't even see myself being a VA for a different field, I would say. And yeah, while the experiences with my previous client was valuable, I yearned for like a deeper connection and more I would say more aligned work ethic. And that's when I met Tammy Waugh from a friend. So one of her agents before was the operations manager for my second client. And I'm not going to detail, but the work there was so it's I would say I'm overloaded with work. I work I work like 7 a.m. Philippine time up until 10 p.m. Philippine time. And even though I really love my work, I don't see it being in my like aligning in my work ethic. And Tammy here was like a beacon of hope for me. Like she just recognized my potential and offering me a chance to thrive. And then our partnership, I would say, was immediate and impactful.
Mhm. That's wonderful. And so, did you, in terms of hours, because that is something, that I think not all work hours are the same, not all schedules are, impact our family lives in the same way, right? And so I think it's something that we don't always take into consideration, right? In terms of like how much work we're piling on, and then some our VAs working all night through the night, right? And so it's sort of like it's paying attention to rhythms and obligations, and she also has a family. So how did your hours shift, and what did that conversation, what does that conversation look like with your employer or potential employer about, needing to have a certain schedule?
Oh, Tammy. With Tammy, she's straight to the point actually. She didn't tell me to be active or online for a specific time. Well, I just told her I'm available every day. Since you hired me full time, then I'm gonna be working for you only. And then she's very respectful with my time, even though I told her I'm available. Anytime tomorrow, she would still ask me if a certain time will be free for me. And yeah, I think it's just setting their expectation that um there's a 12-hour difference between your city to mine. So I told them that for 8 a.m. your time, it's gonna be 8 p.m. my time. And they set the expectation that they will only message me up until 2 in the
Okay.
afternoon because they've
Yeah.
asked me up until what time I am sleeping. And I told them, well, I'm able to sleep at whatever time you need me to. But they told me, and you need to tell us a specific time and we will not be bothering you after that time. Then that works for me, that works for them.
Yeah, I love that because that's kind, right? Is that, even if you're working, full time and you say I'm available, all that as the person delegating, we don't want to be bothering anyone. We want to feel really good and free to contact during this certain time frame. And we also want a relationship that's going to last a long time and be sustainable. And so when we have people exhausting themselves, which is systemic in real estate, right? It's like admin need to be available all the time because real estate happens all the time, but it's not the same type of work and compensation as a salesperson, right? Who's motivated to be available all the time because the potential for commission and for and compensation and sort of incentivized to be, so an admin role, it is more structured, and the compensation is more structured, and it requires, working hours often, right? Because otherwise we run the risk of burnout, and that's costly in all of the ways to everybody. So yeah, we've had it before also that, with our virtual assistant, because of her family situation or because of health thing, that we've had the conversation about shifting slightly and making it work. And there is actually a lot of flexibility. A lot of what we do in coaching and consulting isn't even as urgent as in real estate. So we do have a lot of a lot of flexibility on that side, but it's really important, I think. And also you're talking about, really being seen as a person and not, like a task executor, kind of a clerk machine. And so that requires having a conversation about what you need and what works for you, and how that changes over time. And, our virtual assistant's so valuable to us. There's probably not anything I would say no to, in terms of what she would need, because I want to keep her help. I want to keep her leverage. And so I'm always having that conversation, open to having that conversation. Um, Tell me about marketing. Is it a challenge doing that, remotely, or learning about the business? Or so it seems to be that's quite common as something, Ben was talking about having a TC, and that kind of work is pretty easily outsourced. What about marketing? Have there been any challenges in doing that from abroad?
Um, I would say one of the challenges, I agree with Ben, like the first part of like the time when you join a team, the first few weeks is hard because I know it's like you're starting from scratch, the in a realtor point and then the VA point as well. I mean, me being a virtual assistant, I'm excited, but I'm also afraid of not being able to fulfill what she expects me to do. But what I did when I joined Tammy is really what I said earlier is I set her expectations, and thankfully she's not really wanting me to do more of what I can do. So it's more on a communication team with the both of us.
Mhm. And what communication tools do you use? I think your team's using Trello. So I understand correctly, you
Yeah.
have like a marketing calendar that you have planned out. How else do you communicate?
So the Trello application or site is really helpful for us, which in we meet every Monday through Zoom, and then we talk about what we need to work on for that week, what needs to be done. And then after that meeting, I go into my Trello board, enter all of the tasks that I need to work on, set like a deadline for it so I won't forget. And then we communicate mainly using what do you call it? WhatsApp.
Mhm.
Because Tammy is already established when I joined her team. She already have a operations manager. So I always communicate with her since Tammy is always outside in the field. If we need to send out files, then we use our email, and then I communicate with Tammy mostly using iMessage.
Okay. All right. So
I
you
would
have
say WhatsApp is really helpful.
WhatsApp. Yeah, that's a tool we also use, yeah, because it works abroad, depending on what kind of
Yeah.
phone people have and all of that. So, and then do
And
you
it's
have
great.
the WhatsApp desktop app on your?
Yeah, I have the desktop and I have the phone version.
Yeah, because that's something that I don't know, I went a couple of years using WhatsApp without using the desktop app, and it's just so handy to be able to open links on your computer or copy and paste content from a message, and then put that into wherever it's supposed to end up, right? Because that's the challenge when we receive information from multiple channels, that things can get lost. So it's always like, I've got to find it a home as soon as possible, right? So when it comes in as a text or a WhatsApp, then you can just copy and paste it into Trello or an email or wherever it's supposed to end up ultimately. But that's also about facilitating, certainly generally speaking, like the agents on the team aren't in the project management software as much as we are on the operation side, right? So they're trying to get us information the way that they is most convenient for them, and then we take it and put it sort of where it belongs, organizationally speaking. One of my clients that I work for, he sends me a lot of voice memos in WhatsApp. And that's also really handy because then I can, if it's a long one, have it transcribed, and then, get the action items and put those in. Or if he types, which is more rare, I can just copy and paste it in. So it's, I don't know if you use like voice memo option a lot, but finds I'm able to get a lot of information much more quickly if I just say, just record me a message instead of typing it up. So that can be really, really, really helpful. And the other challenges that you've faced along the way and overcome.
I can think of any. I mean, if there are any challenges aside from that, communicating with Tammy because she's always in the field, but I don't think it's that big of a problem because Maria is always available. The operations manager is always in her office, and I communicate using WhatsApp. If I need to ask question that needs to be answered right away, then she's there to answer it for me. If Tammy isn't around. Oh, I remember not once, twice, or more than twice. If I need to log into a certain site and then it send out a code to Tammy, that it's hard if the only option is a text message to be sent to Tammy.
Yeah.
So if there are option to send it to her email, that's what we're doing because I have access to her email. The
Okay.
ops manager has access to it. I don't want to call Tammy when she's showing out houses and but yeah, that's one of the not that big, but I
Right,
would
right.
say
But
one.
it's logistical. I think so. Same thing. I don't, the move to two-factor authentication, I understand is wonderful from a security standpoint. And it makes my life so difficult sometimes, because you're trying to make progress and then you're just in a holding pattern waiting, and I always feel like I'm bothering people asking for the codes. So far, people are very gracious and
Yeah.
chatting about it.
And you
Um,
know what's crazy is like when Tammy replies with the code, it's already expired, so I need to
Right,
send her
right, right,
another
right.
one.
Some of them it's quick. It's quick. I forget what platform it was, but it was like 5 minutes. And that's a little bit, stressful. So you have to coordinate. So I do try to save up my login things. I very strategically time when I'm going to shut my computer down. It's only once a week. And it's like in anticipation for when I'll be able to coordinate to get the logins. Um, Great to use email when you can, right? So you can pick up those codes. There's also, I have a Google Voice number that we share. So we can be able to, if it has to be a text, some platforms will let us use that. So, we generally have like a big spreadsheet which is not very secure, but it has like, the login info and then a note about where the two-factor goes, so that everyone's kind of prepared in that regard. But yeah, I mean, it makes us more reliant on each other than we like to be as independent as possible. Like, just tell me what you need and I'll take care of it. Oh, but by the way, I need that code and that code and that code. So absolutely, that can be a challenge. What about you, Carlota? Is there anything that's come up that's been either, a really great tool or a challenge that you've been facing?
Um, Actually, right now we are having a system. So I think Trello, our Trello, our notes, and the follow-up boss, we are having a system with all of our tasks because we are using Tammy's notes.
Mhm.
So um
Those are
we
like her Apple Notes or like her
yeah,
that Notes
it's
app.
an Apple Notes. So she could access that even if she was on open house or in on the field. So we also have the Trello for our transactions, step by step transaction. So we are organized with our transactions.
Yeah,
And
so
then
that's a dashboard so everybody can see kind of what's been done, what's still outstanding.
yes, so sometimes I just get too overwhelmed when I wanted to finish all the tasks this day, but sometimes I missed information or the data for our some of the forms. So I think it was not really a good work ethics to execute. So I need to prioritize task
Yeah,
to be able to be
to be
that's
effective. Yeah, because it's often speed and accuracy.
yes.
Ideally, we would like to have all of both, but sometimes it's a trade-off. And so I know that, you're responsible for a lot of TC related tasks, right? A lot of executing like documents and really paying attention to those details. And so sometimes that requires us to really slow down and focus. And that means maybe we won't get to other
Mm,
things.
yeah.
But that is, there is an understanding of, what is the priority for my role. And,
Mhm.
also being able to push back a little bit and just be like, if in order to be able to execute at this high level of accuracy, this is what I'm going to be able to do today or not. And I mean, I think that's what Ben was referring to earlier also, is that like the business owner doesn't really know all of the things you're working on. Like that's kind of the point, right? Is that they're not, as Lena was talking about before, they're not micromanaging like your day, how you organize your time, how you organize your tasks. But as a result, like really only you know exactly what's on your plate, and need to kind of prioritize. And I think, especially in admin roles, we're yes people. And it's hard to think about the fact that when we say yes to something, we're probably saying no to something else, whether it's, ideally not accuracy, but it could be accuracy or, no to getting it in on time because now we're trying to do 5 things instead of 3. And so I think, with the experience, comes the ability to say, I can absolutely get that for you. I'm working on this other thing. Is it okay if I pause and readjust to be able to take care of it? And so that's all. I mean, I think the theme here is always the communication, right? That's a little bit less natural when we're not in the same space and we're not in the same time, but is, absolutely feasible. And that's been like a sort of secret sauce ingredient in the secret sauce of success for all of us has been this agreement that we're gonna communicate, what we need and what's possible, and be open to listening. Lena, how are
Do
you?
any of the VAs, this is a question for the VAs, do any of you have like a process of double checking your work, like sending it through an AI or, you know, stepping away for a break and then coming back to it and reviewing it? What's your process for reviewing your work before you submit it?
For me, for example, the one um that I did wrong last time. Actually, before I submit that to the title company, the commission statement, I am drafting it in on that loop and then sending it to Tammy for approval. So that was our process before sending it to the title company. I need an approval from Tammy, even the JOT form. JOT form is part of the our transactions for the brokerage firm of Tammy. So I am sending all those forms to Tammy first for approval, for checking, and then I will send them to the title company.
There's another set of eyes. Um,
I don't do any transactions. I focus more on social media postings. So what I can apply with your question is with the captions that I work on. I use AI. I use Gemini, which is the Google AI. Before I used GPT, but as time comes, there were like all of the all of the captions that were given to me are almost the same already. So I kind of look for a different option. Gemini is much um diverse. What I say with kinds of wordings that it will use for the caption. So I create the caption first and then I put it in Gemini and then ask Gemini, make sure that this is in the right, it uses the right grammar, and if you can add anything that will make the caption good, please add it. And then I always make sure to say, please add SEO hashtags at the end of the caption, which is very grateful to increase our views and then likes on social media.
that's great. I mean, I think AI is really just elevating, you know, what we can do because we're able to produce so much more. I was going to I use Grammarly to check all my emails. So it's like it's a Chrome extension that can check your grammar and your spelling. So it means I don't have to really reread emails before I just write, and it'll let me know generally if there's something wrong. The one thing that as a former historian who's obsessed with time, and I cannot stand getting scheduling wrong. It's just like my pet peeve. So and I'm working a lot of time zones. So I'm in Europe, and you know, I have clients in almost all the time zones in the US, and sometimes just trying to figure out when, and then daylight savings starts or ends different times in different places, and I want to cry. So I always schedule meetings and only invite myself, look at the calendar, make sure it's okay, and then I'll invite someone else. Because it happened just once or twice enough that I sent the wrong time and then I had to correct it. That now I just best practice, throw it on there, it looks good. Now I can send the invite out to people. So those are kind of like a check, you know, for people who are doing a lot of scheduling. It's easy. It's just like one extra step, and it prevents you from kind of getting it wrong. We love Google Calendar also for this because we can have the view of everybody's calendars kind of layered on top of each other and see where the overlap is. So that's been a game changer for us in terms of scheduling things. Another interesting thing for AI, we didn't talk as much about, you know, figuring out from the business owner or, you know, lead admin perspective of trying to figure out like, what is this person going to do for me? A lot of times the first step that we have people go through is just like, okay, what are all the things that have to happen in your business? Kind of like a brain dump with a checklist. And we like to use a checklist that has sort of all the tasks and then has columns for like swim lanes for the different responsibilities. So it's like, okay, that really should be the agent, but that could be the assistant or that could be a TC. And so what we've used AI for most recently is now we just upload that and say, write a job description for everything in the assistant column. And so it'll churn out like, here's the full list of responsibilities for the assistant based on the task list. And it's done in 5 seconds, which would have otherwise been a lot of brain power. And then it's not the sexiest of lists. So if we really want to attract someone to that role, we then ask it to turn it into a job ad that is really engaging and kind of fun. And so then it'll change the wording to make it more of like a marketing piece for the opportunity. And so that was all, the part that required your brain was, what could I imagine in my process not having to do anymore, which does require something, but then the actual compiling of the job description or the job ad can just be outsourced like that, which is really, really nice. When we hired our virtual assistant, I had this very limited idea of what she could do for us. So maybe I'll ask her to take some meeting notes, which again now is AI. Maybe I'll have her write some emails for me or something, and then very quickly learn she could probably do almost everything that I do, which as an admin operations professional was kind of scary because I was like, did I just hire myself out of a job? But actually, the fact that I could leverage, all of my time consuming tasks, I handed off, and then I got to do more of what was interesting to me. And then actually got to start working with clients and be really creative. And so it shifted my thinking and my role in the business because I wasn't in the weeds. Someone else was doing the weeds. And so it allowed me to step up. So I think that was one of the best surprises, was that actually I was not so essential in the business, that someone else could do what I do and then I can do something else. It frees me up. So I think, but that's not, immediate, right? Like that takes time. But now that we know that that's true, our business structure has changed. So, yeah, there's actually, real estate is always going to be like a boots on the ground. We need some people to be physically present in order to help out. Like Ben was saying, opening doors and installing signs or what, but otherwise so much of it can be done logistically remotely. So that's been a pleasant discovery since 2020, when people, before that, people weren't even thinking like that. So it's been really creative. Yarden, I know you're here and wasn't sure if you wanted to pop in and hop on with any questions, or Ben, if you had anything else you wanted to add after this conversation.
Hi,
Hi.
and thank you. I wasn't sure if this was going to be like an active forum or not. I'm
Oh, sure. Yeah.
mainly here to listen and absorb because we're probably gonna use some form of virtual assistants on my team in the future, and I am really wondering on best practices so that we can shorten the trial and error period. So this is really informative for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, it's with everything that the first time might not work out. It's like, I think it's, really like a trust the process kind of a thing, because not everybody's going to be a great match right from the start. And I do think you do have to like walk down the steps of the pool with someone and give it a couple week trial before we really get a sense. So I do know teams, just setting expectations wise, bet, we lucked into it on our first one, and I think Ben was on maybe number 2. And, I think other times it can take 4 or 5 until you find, the right fit. Carlotta's on her team, but there's been another role that they've cycled through some people for. So sort of like, if we could say anything here, it's like it can work, and it can work extremely well. And, that sometimes finding the right fit might take a little while.
Yeah, I would say two things. One, our first virtual assistant was good, and we hired our second virtual assistant, and we saw she was great.
Mm.
And so we realized it was in the best interest of the company to, let our first virtual assistant, move forward with other opportunities and harness the power of our second virtual assistant and maximize that relationship and then, hire from there. Um, and the best advice I can give you is just create a checklist for everything you do in your business. And then next to it, put who can be responsible for that. And if there's, 100 things you do to list a house or whatever you do for a living, I think you'll probably notice that like 80% of those tasks can be assigned to, a really nice person who has access to Wi-Fi anywhere in the world. And then the 20% of the tasks are really, where you make your payday. Um, because without having those checklists, like you're not going to be able to maximize your virtual assistant's time, which is ultimately your money.
Yeah, and it's also hard to track, without a checklist like that, it's hard to track what has been done and hasn't been done. And so as Ben was saying before, like then you can spend a lot of time in the recap. I think recap a daily end of day summary is a best practice for anyone new in the role in the first 90 days, 100%, because it's like we need to build confidence from them that they can execute and confidence with us that we've hired them and that they're getting stuff done. But after that, it can take it can take their time up and take your time up for reading it. And so that it's much better to get that data, that information where it lives in the checklist as opposed to through another source where we're sort of moving it and then might try to migrate back. And so having the checklist allows you to have that dashboard view, that transparency, and really figure out, what is getting done. So you're not waking up in the middle of the night, like, did they take care of that? Or, you're not kind of questioning and telling stories in your head, and that erodes the trust, and then it's really hard to get back. So yeah, like a task list for what they should be doing and a tool for tracking if it's been done or
Yeah, the plan is to probably add them to the project management tool.
Yeah. What do you
Just
use
to
for your
have that
project
sign.
management tool?
Right now, we're still on Trello.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to educate myself on ClickUp and Asana because
Yep.
I want to build something a lot bigger that can serve not just the listing process or the client process, but can serve internal processes in the team and internal projects. And then also allow outside collaborators that I can add to specific parts of the process, and they don't have to have visibility over the whole thing.
Sure.
And I think those platforms will serve in that capacity.
Yeah, we've had great, seen teams have great experience with ClickUp and Asana also. I mean, just a different style, right, of a visual representation of the tools and the information. I think Trello doesn't allow you to go as deep into the what, sort of like what you see is what you get, which
Exactly.
can be good, but then depending on the complexity of the project and how many people are involved. I really like ClickUp. I don't know, yeah,
You
especially because
prefer ClickUp too?
yeah, I
Yeah,
do
I had
because
a
then
sales
you
meeting with them and they sold me too.
yeah, I was talking about Loom before and how much we love Loom, and you can just record your video in ClickUp
Yep, I've
directly
seen that.
there. Oh, it's so nice. Yeah, to keep it all kind of centralized like that. I mean, Asana is really nice too. It's a little bit more of like a glorified spreadsheet, which I love a spreadsheet, so sure, why not? But I do think, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's nice to hear from other people who are also who have also tried both and have what is emerging to be a preference because I initially worked on ClickUp. This is taking us to a different direction. I initially worked on it as a collaborator on somebody else's board, so I saw very limited possibilities. But then I remembered that they also told me that ClickUp has grown and that now you can build your whole business on there. So I was like, let's try them out. And I was really impressed.
Yeah. And same for collaboration, right? Isn't think like
Exactly. And especially when you're talking about collaboration across continents and time zones and all of that, I think that would really, if we build it right, that would really help with cohesion and streamlining everything and knowing where everybody is in the process, including notifications when things get done or deadline notifications. And that's exactly what I want to automate more when working with somebody remote.
Yeah, that's perfect, right? Because then it's like the whole point is that we don't want to spend our time now doing all the managing, right? It's like we want to also be freed up to do other types of work in the business. And so it's like it's an investment in the start to structure it, and then afterwards, and people always, anybody in any operations role, it appreciates walking into a structure, right? And being like, what do I have to do to succeed? Tell me what, excellent looks like here. Set me up for success. And so, I think sometimes
I dare say in every role.
in every role, I know it's like, but do salespeople love that? I don't know, because it's a little bit of the like, wild, wild west. They're drawn to the wild, wild west. Like, maybe don't tell me what to do, but you're right. I think everyone thrives with some kind of regular schedule or a time
Let's
block.
call it a plan with a
Plan,
plan
right?
operation. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a best practice. You're right.
I know
So
I missed the beginning. I was wondering, I don't know if it's an inappropriate question, but are you guys kind of sharing companies where you've found help that you liked?
that's a great question. Yeah,
Just to
yeah.
like kind of help focus my process of searching from somebody out of everyone out there.
Sure. Yeah, we use Level. We've hired all of our admin through Level, and often recommended them to our clients. They've found talent for us, and I really like their process for screening and then for support afterwards. I think, Ben, maybe you worked with a different service, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, we worked with a Hire Smart virtual assistant, and I think the owner is based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and has relationships, I think, in the Philippines. And they line up, they vet, and they screen to three applicants, and then they'll schedule a video call for, can't remember if it was a set amount of time, maybe, 20, 30 minutes, something like that. And then at the end of those three video calls, you can either make a decision and move forward, or if you needed more time, or if you, wanted to, if none of those were acceptable to you. And I believe they request compensation upfront based on just the number of hires, not based on the amount of people they screen or qualify. And that was really good, very hands-on from the owner. She had a personal assistant, a virtual assistant, as her kind of executive assistant, who did a lot of the communication. That was a really good experience. And I would, that would probably be my initial first go-to without doing any additional research.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think Pro REA staffing, I can't remember if they do source in the Philippines also, but they're like real estate recruiting company.
What are they called?
Pro REA staffing.
So last time I talked to her like a year ago, she said she was actually closing the business. I don't know if anything
And
changed.
they reopened. Yeah, her lead recruiter, took over the business, Erin Mayorado. So she just reopened. So I don't know currently if virtual assistants are part of the searches that they do. But I know that they source directly there. So yeah, so there's options there. Wonderful. We're at time. That's a whole hour. I am so grateful, all of you, for your attention, your contributions, your participation. This is really so valuable to be able to talk cross inter team and role, right? To see from everybody's perspective, kind of what's working, what's been challenging, how we've overcome it. And so we're just so grateful for your time today. Thank you. And we'll send out the recording in case you're interested or want to share it to anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Take care, everyone.